Welcome to John Wick 3, Parabellum Terrific. Ensure you've seen the other John Wick recaps by raising a ruckus around town button, as this one gets just a brief time after the last film left off. How about we go? John Wick is hurrying up in the large city in light of the fact that the overall abundance on his head is going to go live, and he's a little coming up short on assets with even the destitute Bowery organization currently near him. So he ensures that the canine is dealt with and goes to the New York Public Library, considering to be its free, where he's been keeping a crisis stash with a cross and a marker among a few dark volumes. In any case, before his hour of opportunity is up, Andra the Thin Goliath chooses to get an early advantage for a $14 million abundance on his head. So John gives him fairly percussive training on the Russian scholarly work of art, demonstrating that this person had taken on way too much prior to snapping his neck, and making a beeline for an underground specialist to sort the cut in his conduit out while the second in a real sense tick away until all hidden world administrations are suspended, driving John to polish himself off. Thus the results of his activities in the last film go live to paint the greatest objective ever on John Wick's back. So he says thank you for the assistance since projectiles are his main avenue for affection. Furthermore, the intensity is in collectively of Chinese executioners pursue him through the roads into an old weapon gallery where John has minutes to strip separated a lot of old guns for a crisis reconstruct to blow a person away prior to crushing glass and kicking ass, exchanging kidney shots for nut wafers, and fending off professional killers in an all-you-can-eat smorgasbord of one-of-a-kind blades where everybody gets grabby and Wick almost loses his own garbage before a short proximity blade tossing bad dream kicks and that tests everyone's reflexes, bringing about John methodically patting the outright cheeses out of several people, and utilizing his mix of takedowns to ultimately effectively express the idea, in a manner of speaking, into this person prior to letting another investigate his number one blade prior to wrapping up business with the axe pack. So then, at that point, an Italian hit group cut in with the vehicle and pursue him into certain pens so that the young men can move around in the feed before John ad-libs some equestrian slap methods to weaponize the ponies and drag back out into the roads again for a few extraordinary shots through the city, and a capture from some bikers where John ends up being a cultivated rider by sliding into a solitary stirrupper, arrive at round to wrap up the activity, lastly give him a second to relax. This has now bumped the contract up to $15 million before John uses that cross to gain some after-dark entry to the ballet. Turns out this is the crime organization of the Roscaroma, a group that's been training orphans like John to become pillars for the assassin's underworld, be it through the methods of tolerating pain or the ways of inflicting damage. The director should be excommunicating him, too. But it looks like the sons of Belarus get to call in a one-time ticket that burns you out of the family for good, because John wants passage to Casablanca. An adjudicator has arrived at the Continental, a rather unlikable representative of the high table that's investigating the death of Santino d'Antonio on what should have been safe ground. Turns out that thanks to the head start he gave John, Winston is under investigation and soon to be replaced, which is something he takes very seriously. She then goes over to Morpheus and the Bowery crew for providing John with a gun to kill a high table member, telling him to give up his throne in 7 days, which he doesn't take seriously and laughs her off. This was a mistake because under her authority, she employs a bunch of practicing Shinobia assassins to take care of everyone who has assisted Wick. And their leader, Zero, is super keen to slicing and dicing his way into the underground network, while his students make use of their mastery of the shadows to disorient and deliver punishment to the forces of the Bowery King, who now pays for those 7 bullets with 7 slices instead. Well, sometimes you've got to cut a motherfucker. then slay their way into the ballet school as they step in and out of the shadows. But the Ruscaroma and the High Table are two groups that have a special understanding, so she just received a slap on the wrist instead. Down in Casabella, John is a recognized face and about to go through some more of the same. But it turns out the manager of the Moroccan Continental has for some reason granted him amnesty. Mostly it's just so that she can enjoy shooting him herself, because they're old acquaintances from back in the day before she moved up into management. Good to see you too. Turns out that John holds a marker of his own over Sophia, for once keeping her daughter safe and incognito, even to herself. What he's after is a face-to-face with the elder known as he who sits above the table. So they take the dogs for a walk over to see Braun, a rather slimy manager of the local assassin's coin production, who knows the elder's location but wants to take a dog in return for the directions, and then shoots it after Sophia says no. Well, this turns the whole mood sour, resulting in a bloodbath where, unlike John, she manages to still respect her superiors and restrain her feelings to leg shots only. He shot my dog. I get it. Before they then murder their way out through a tsar of hashed ashens and various bugs, using a combination of gun techniques along with the trained dogs to take down the competition. These animals provide an effective support option to alleviate suppressing fire and make for some cool canine combat to take down combinations, where even a high vantage point isn't going to keep anyone safe from getting mauled with everyone ending up getting torn apart. John's also there doing his thing, but by now we all know what that looks like, and so fear drives him out to look for the elder assassin, and lets him know just how much she'll miss him before going off her own way. Because taking the directions from Braun seriously, John walks off into a spirit journey deep into the desert and follows the stars until he almost dies from the exposure in the hopes that the elder will choose to find him. And he comes round to find himself in the presence of he who is above the table, Altair, the one man ruling over all the assassins who has the power to remove the bounty and the excommunicado, whilst also binding him as a lapdog assassin to the high table for the rest of his life. But before that happened, he's been tasked with killing Winston, who's been deemed as getting too big for his boots, which will only then get the killers off his back. Well, it's still the best offer he's going to hear all day. So Joan reaffirms his fealty with an Assassin's Creed ring finger before getting another suit and being sent back home. Assassins are still out to kill him the moment he enters the city. But in these circles, it's those trained in the art of shadow that end up being the bigger fish, keeping John alive and available for their boss. But the old sudden appearance-disappearance classic doesn't impress the bogeyman who knows how to pull off the same trick himself. So he gets his hands on a sweet ride on the way out and ends up in a rolling ninja bike chase where he finds himself having to sword fight at high speed, which is quite simply a terrible idea for someone controlling a motorbike before jamming up their tires to finish off the chase and crashing himself right up to the finish line, where John slaps across the boundary of the Continental before Zero can finish him off, because he, at least, still has to respect the safe space rules. So all things being equal, the person-only fanboys over the legend of John Wick in the sitting area while he will find the canine. Zero emerges with the old, "We're something similar, you and I," stuff that miscreants like to say, before John goes up to meet Lovejoy in his display area assortment space, saved for unique events. Winston knows why John is here, and he provides the man with the decision of living as a lap canine, or maybe rather making do as a liberated person, since he's chosen not to step down all things considered, which will put him at battle with the high table. Will you be placing a projectile in his mind? No, I don't figure I will. So the adjudicator settles on the decision and deconsecrates the mainland New York for being underhanded young men. The attendant ensures that John arms himself suitably, while each of different visitors leave the lodging. Zero and his understudies will lead the hit with a high table, sending over their own powers for help, showing up by mentor like a homicide field trip, while John goes out to chase, while the chief endures it with a beverage. The attendant and the remainder of the lodging staff are a competent group, yet not ready for an equipped shock troop battle, as similar as the later levels of a computer game. This parcel are wearing full-body impenetrable reinforcement, really intending that notwithstanding his standard headshot precision, John needs to make a solid effort to keep them drew in and track down the holes to arrive at the delicate, gooey focuses. Indeed, the primary wave is down, and the two men are pissed at the 5-star criminal rating, returning for a few greater firearms with defensive layer penetrating slugs. Furthermore, this permits the smooth sets of noble men to begin completely exposing away pieces of the kill crew like watermelons as they let off a little pressure, and possessing them with his typical handgun style so he can get in some more fast, liquid clasp reloading. John causes portions of their heads to vanish into fog, bringing things down to the pool level for a fast example in liquid mechanics before John comes over to transform the remainder of the hits group into a shower bomb. I realize you accept you can keep this up. However,